there with needless chatter and gossip and disturb her concentration. No visitors from other departments with insipid questions, just herself and her work. The hospital was never empty. Emergencies. No business hours. But no one ever ventured into the morgue unless they absolutely had to. Melody was free to set to the never-ending stack of paperwork, earbuds flooding her mind with familiar tunes. Entombed at her desk in her own thoughts and music, Melody bent to the desk, her pen scratching over the Spartan forms. She had been working about an hour when she heard a tapping. Tap, tap, tapping. She paused her music and listened. Silence filled the room. She shrugged it off and started her playlist, turned back to her forms. She had just finished one page when the tapping came again. Melody paused the music, took one earbud out and said hello. Hello, she called. If there was someone at the door, that was usually enough to coax them inside. But there was nothing, just silence. Weird, she thought to herself. Maybe it was the pipes acting up again. Or rats in the ductwork. Those buggers always seemed to get in, no matter how many times the exterminator came. Irritated at the repeated interruptions, Melody went back to work. She barely put a pen to paper when the tapping came again, louder this time and more insistent. Crawling with anger, Melody tossed her pen on the desk and stood. "I hear you," she yelled as she stomped towards the door. "You can just come in, you know. You don't have to." Jerking the door open, the words died in Melody's throat. There was no one there. She poked her head into the hallway, looking one way, then the other. But there was no one. Feeling uneasy, Melody closed the doors. Had to be the plumbing, she told herself. She was halfway back to her desk when the tapping came again. Without her earbud, she could pinpoint the source. A chill of terror dripped down her spine. Melody turned to the stainless steel refrigerated cabinets. This time the tapping didn't stop. Lightning nations. My dad gave away my custom-made birthday cake to my twin sister. My twin sister always got whatever she wanted. Her name was Allison, and she loved causing trouble and blaming me for it. One time she saw Mom make this big lasagna and left it in a glass dish on the counter to cool down. Allison hated lasagna. She knocked the dish to the floor, shattering it to a million pieces. Running and telling Dad that I did it. Dad dragged me into the room by my arm, which felt like my arm was going to rip out of the socket. Allison told him to take away my Pikachu toy because that was my favorite Pokemon. Even though it wasn't, I just told her it was because I knew she she never could ever punish Allison because that made Dad really mad. I hated living with Dad and Allison. I even told Mom for my birthday present I wanted it to be just me and her. On my birthday, my mom baked 2 cakes to celebrate. Allison got a vanilla Five Nights at Freddy's one, which was her favorite game, but Mom made me a lemon Pikachu. I got upset because I thought she knew that wasn't really my favorite Pokemon, and I hated lemon, but I didn't say anything because I knew she worked really hard making it. Mom said I was not allowed any of Allison's cake, and she was not allowed any of mine. Allison complained to Dad, who said she could eat whatever she liked. Allison stuffed her mouth with a piece of my cake, and when Mom tried to stop her, Dad pushed her onto the floor. He ate a piece himself and laughed at her with all his yellow frosting flying from his mouth. Al started making these coughing sounds. Dad went to help, but then he fell to his knees and held his throat. His face got even redder than when he yelled at Mom. Mom pulled a secret Charizard, my favorite Pokemon cake, out of the fridge and carried it over to me. She said that one was chocolate orange, my favorite. She only made the lemon one because she knew Allison and Dad would want it. They were both rolling on the floor now. My mom led me outside by the hand and asked if I wanted to go on a special birthday trip without Dad or Allison. I asked her where we were going. She said it didn't matter. The important thing is that we were never coming back. That was excellent. By forgotten well. My teenage son will not stop sleeping in. My husband was murdered at work. He managed a gas station. It was robbed. He cooperated, gave them all the money, and that monster still shot him. The only thing that kept me together was trying to care for our son David. His father's murder was all over the news. David took it really hard. He was barely talking to anyone. He wouldn't eat. Mostly he would just sleep. I would go into his room at 3 in the afternoon and he'd be asleep. Before long I got him to a psychiatrist to get on some antidepressants. I prayed that once they were working I'd have my smiling boy back. But he started sleeping more, longer, up to eat breakfast, then right back to sleep. He'd fight with me when I tried to wake him up. David, you can't sleep all day. If you want to feel better, you have to get up, get some exercise. You don't understand. I need to sleep. David, please. Dad's there. Honey, we all have dreams. No, he's there. These aren't dreams. I can feel him. I remember everything. He wants me to be with him. We will talk to Dr. Rosam and get your dosage adjusted. Now get up. I forced him to go on a walk with me. He didn't speak the whole time. That night I warned him I was setting an alarm for the next morning. I wouldn't let him sleep in. He begrudgingly wished me good night. The next morning he didn't wake up. I shook and shouted, but he was limp and pale. That's when I saw the empty bottle of antidepressants and a note. I want to live with Dad, so I've decided to sleep forever. Sorry, Mom. I kept thinking he would wake up even after the ambulance and police came. I kept wanting for the morgue to call and say, my son has woke up. I lay in his bed and I cried all night. The sun rose. I was so exhausted I passed out. It was like I was in a Ghibli movie. Everything was so warm and inviting. I saw my husband and son playing catch with a football. When they saw me, they cheered and ran to me, hugging me and showering me with kisses. Are you staying, Mom? Something was wrong. My son I recognized, but the more I looked at my husband, the less familiar he looked. son. I needed to save him time to go to sleep for the last time. Scarbium. Halloween comes but once a year. October is an orange month. The trees surrender their leaves so they may bless the small towns that honor the hunting season. Sardonic pumpkins sit at hellish emissaries, capricious eyes aglow. Danny was walking home on Halloween after collecting his Scooby-Doo comic from the Inkwell bookshop. He knew he was perhaps a little too old to be liking Scoob, but he enjoyed their adventures and their sense of family. The spooky stuff, he loved the spooky stuff. The town had, really gone to town this year, and as he strolled along, he became excited. Scary sounds of screaming ghouls and wooing ghosts streamed out of hidden speakers. Bunting in the shape of cats and witches adorned the frontage of every shop. Demented displays danced with animated denizens of the season. Headless horsemen, gliding ghosts, zoned out zombies. Halloween 2008 was going to be one to remember. As he turned the corner, he caught the smell of clam chowder from Nancy's. He then saw that a new store at the end of the street was just opening its doors. The woman at the entrance smiled and beckoned Danny in. She was a plump little old thing that radiated homely warmth. First customer, she said, her accent an unfamiliar one. That's gotta be worth something. Danny went in. On every shelf were toys he had never seen before, produced by brands he had never heard of. Everything appeared antiquated. He grabbed one called the Crimson Terror. There were others too: Runny Nose, Clawing Clown, Skinny Bones, No Legs, Lucy, Witch, Sparklers, Dr. Dog. You like them? The owner asked. They're a bit creepy, Danny replied, fascinated by one called Baby Organ. You like creepy things? Danny shrugged. I guess so. The old woman clapped her hands in joyous delight. I'm looking for a helper around the place. Are you interested? The teen nodded. His family could certainly use the money. The owner walked over to the doors and closed them. Danny thought that a little odd, but was unduly worried. Was not unduly worried. I'm so happy you've agreed to run the shop with me. With those words, everything went black with the slightest of moments. When the light returned, Danny noticed a bright ochre glow outside. The old woman reopened the door and beckoned Danny over. Come see. What Danny saw terrified him. Stretching into the distance were millions of pumpkins, rotten and moldy. They filled the horizon. In the dark, dark sky hung a tawny Betty Ban moon. The stars were squashed seeds. He quickly realized the shop sat alone in the middle of the patch. Don't be afraid, the woman explained tenderly. Every Halloween I can bring back a child if they agree to help me run the shop. Tearfully, Danny looked back inside the shop. The toys were all wailing like hungry babies. You're lucky you're not trapped here forever like me, the owner said. And I'll be sad to see you go when the toys get bored of eating pumpkin. Dungeon Marshal. The preparation. The body of the deceased was laid in a supine position on the stainless steel table. The head was elevated slightly, the eyelids mastered this technique. To him, the body looked like a vaudeville performer or ventriloquist dummy. He had used too much blush on the cheeks. He was doing his best to correct the mistake when the door chime sounded. He walked to his intercom and pressed the button. "Please give me a moment," he said. "I'll be right up." A short while later, Sebastian opened his front door with a cup of coffee in his hand. Standing on his porch was Alex Shaw, his lifelong friend. "Took you long enough to get to the door, Sebastian. I've been standing out in the rain. Sorry about that. Come on in. Were you down in the basement again? It seems like you're down there every time I come over. What do you do down there anyway?" "Oh, just one of my little hobbies," he said indifferently. That was chilling. So he wasn't a morgue preparation, he was actually a killer. Original dash Laquad 3788. Please reach out. In the modern world, it's almost impossible to get away with murder. If it isn't the feds monitoring your messages, it's your 12-year-old sister documenting every goddamn moment of her life on TikTok. And then there's this thing. There are more victims than ever before. Not to overstate the obvious, but being the victim is in fashion. I posted on Instagram how life is tough for Gen Z's kids, and sure enough, I got a whole bunch of direct messages. That's when I noticed him. He is one of those kids, he had plenty of photos on his profile, but all of the anime chicks, and only a few of himself, where the camera was not quite at the right angle, showing off a mustache about as thick as the hair on an albino's toes. I saw him at school, and he said I'd like to get to know him. I told him I had a mean boyfriend the next town over, and it was best if we kept it secret. He agreed, and we met in the forest. He sat in the old tire swing at donut size. Inside a bigger donut. "You look all lonely there," I said. He nearly fell backward out of the swing. "Well, I suppose I am. There's this cliche about teenage boys, like they're crazy horny, but a lot of times it's not true. Boys that aren't starved of sex, they're starved of touch, and just to touch someone, anyone, they feel like that painting on the roof of the Sistine Chapel." I reached out and took his hand, and at first he flinched, and finally he gave it and sobbed in my lap. We continued meeting like this after school. I Instagram, and Kelly started insisting that they visit a local flower shop and then a local sunflower farm for selfies. After all, it was quite easy to go through their life avoiding sunflowers. Ryan had a childhood memories of them wilting and musting as his last memories of his mother's funeral. Later he remembered a patch growing wild and a patch of earth close to school. They were so tall, their black and brown speckled heads nodding in the blinding sunlight, birds flapping around them in those ugly yellow petals. Ryan hated them, hated walking by them, and was relieved when they moved to a sunflower-free place. Then he was able to forget the plant monsters, and even his nightmares of them, brown and yellow, flapping and nodding, faded. Until now, Kelly was obsessed with social media. Ryan didn't mind and even starting enjoying it, arranging his sushi on the plate just so before eating, stopping it every so often for those all-important couple selfies, and joining her and reading comments and comparing the number of likes on different photos. But this was different. He didn't even know at first why he kept finding excuses not to visit the sunflower farm until one day in early fall. Kelly said she'd planned it. They were going this Saturday, as it would be the last weekend of the season and the farm was open to the public. She said it in a tone that brooked no disagreement, and instantly Ryan's childhood horror awakened as he tensely sharp as when he had to walk by them twice a day, trying to avoid the sight of their beastly, speckled, seed-filled heads and flapping large petals. Saturday morning arrived too soon. Kelly looked stunning in a bright blue dress, and she fussed with Ryan's matching lighter blue casual-looking t-shirt. Blue will pop against the background, see, sweetie, as she showed her screen displaying millions of pictures of grinning fools against the malign creatures. Ryan shuddered and turned away as they drove closer to the farm. His misery grew deeper. The blobs of brownie yellowed against the dark green shone brighter, and their haunting, terrible smell hung in the crisp fall air. The crowd was unbelievable. Clearly, they were not the only ones hoping to catch the last sunflower pics of the season. The happy farmer took their cash and ushered them towards the field. Ryan felt he was suffocating. Kelly's voice came from a distance. "Here, what do you think, sweetheart?" The laughing, chattering crowd seemed to pull him away from her and deeper into the mass of sunflowers. He glimpsed Kelly arranging her sun hat and shirt, then she vanished from sight. The crowd melted, and Ryan was alone, surrounded by the sunflowers, their seated dark heads towering over him, leaning down closer. The petals brushed against his skin. He sank to the earth, screaming hysterically. The plants bent over him, covering him with green leaves and yellow petals, and he knew nothing more. Curated by it. Closing my eyes has always bothered me. The last subtle slit of light before darkness takes it away. Another world. Another world. Entirely blanketed by sheets of formless black draped on what we perceived around us. I always felt something. They're able to see and feel that space much better than we can, slowly closing in to she reluctantly opened it and read it. To Millie, or whoever might read this, I cannot take its beckons anymore. I have gone to find it. I know you would not believe it's actually there, but it is. You know how I've been acting strange for some time. Well, the truth is, it's all started in May. I was driving home from work when I saw this thing. At first I thought it was only a mirage, a play of light on the rainy, soggy day, a dark peak looming above the clouds, way higher than any mountains of that range should be, a menacing point above the clouds as dark as the night and just as sinister. I dismissed it, but it clung onto the back of my mind. I saw it again a week later. I asked you what that weird mountain is, but you didn't see anything out of the ordinary. You didn't see the pyramid like black stone mountain standing like an evil monolith of a forgotten time. I asked you again a couple days ago, and you just showed me pictures of the mountain range, white snow-covered peaks and green forested hills not too high, and that's it. No black peaks. That's when I stopped bothering you with it. Nobody else saw what I saw either. That's when I felt quiet about the whole situation. I thought I started losing my mind. Maybe I did. The mountain started beckoning me. Climb to the peak. There lies the truth you are seeking. Climb. Climb to the peak. Do not fear. Do not cower. Do not hesitate. Climb. 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 So I did. I tried ignoring the nagging voice in my head. For some time I could. Then it started telling me of dark futures, of death, decay, darkness, sadness, and of your and Billy's demise, and of my own. Images straight from hell appeared in front of me. I could stop all of it, all I had to do, prevent everything that had been told to me. I could let you and Billy live. I went to find the mountain and whatever it holds on those black peaks. I hope to return to you, but that might not happen. Stay safe. I love you forever. James. James Novak was never found. Mountain rescue squads scoured the mountain range, looking for the man at first, then his corpse later on. He was never discovered. The mountain he referenced has been found written about in medieval scriptures from a nearby monastery, a hellish omen set out by the deities to warn of an impending apocalypse. Nobody ever actually saw the mountain, though only in writings of lonely monks. Nobody except James Novak. By Cornia. She is Her smile, I touched my face as I kept walking, never looking back. It was different than mine. Weathered would be the wrong word, as wrinkles form a smile that are never wasted time. Yes, she was different, but the same, but different enough for me to wonder if I've ever smiled that way. Which only caused me to smile, for her coming back meant that the therapy worked for me, because now it meant that I was finally free. We had a deal after all, a contract. See, I was a clone, but now I'm starting my first day as a person. Grand underscore theft underscore motto. All the blue below. Pardon. Maggie glanced over. What? Could have sworn I just heard someone say my name. I shifted in my seat and let out a breath. The view from the 40,000 feet up was almost worth how bad my hands were shaking. Maggie had noticed them trembling even before we took off, so I had wrapped my fingers around the ends of each armrest and squeezed until my knuckles popped. Now my hands were still, the tendons always standing out every now and then. I might have to pry myself free after landing, but at least Maggie seemed to believe me when I said I was doing all right. The plane hit a bad patch of air and I shivered. I managed to swallow a yelp. After a second, I tried to laugh. Passengers, just a little taste of turbulence is all, I said in my best pilot impression. Not 3 seconds later, the actual intercom clicked to life. Passengers, goon the rail pilot, just a little taste of turbulence is all. Creepy, I muttered, looking over to Maggie to see if she noticed the deja vu. She was fast asleep, an airline blue blanket wrapped tight to her shoulder. I smiled and glanced across the aisle in case if any of our neighbors caught the strange echo. An old man was watching me from the row over. His face was pale and tired, but oddly wrinkle-free. A dirty gray beard spread out like a stain from around his mouth. We made eye contact and I felt socially compelled to say something. Crazy turbulence, huh? Seen worse, he whispered, smiling to show every very white, very small teeth in his mouth. No kidding, I mumbled, looking away. When I was facing board again, it took me a beat or two to understand what I was seeing. Every single person in the plane was staring right at me. Even Maggie was awake and rigid, locked onto me with eyes I did not recognize. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Did I do something to steal everyone's attention? Was my conversation with Mr. Whispers too loud? Some skinny but growing horror was inching its way into my thoughts. What if? No, the old man said, it's not what you're thinking. Places are haunted, vessels are cursed. What? What are you talking about? I turned. Hey, Maggie, Maggie, what is going on? My wife began to wail. Then the other passengers were shrieking as the plane fell into a stone dead dive. I tried to add my voice to the howl, but I found I could not get it in the air. Flames licked at the windows before taking the entire wing on our left side. We dropped so fast, rotating as we plummeted towards the ocean below us, a rapidly approaching scream of blue. I wonder how much you remember this time, Andrew, I heard the old man say just before impact. Pardon. Maggie glanced over. What? I could have sworn I just heard somebody say my name. Wow. That is one of assisted suicide hotline. How may I help you? The feminine voice on David's phone sounded cheerful as it spoke. The what? Asked David. The voice replied, the Glenmore Assisted Suicide Hotline. Here the journey to eternal peace is just a call away. Is this a joke? I'm trying to reach my doctor. I don't have time for this. Oh, Dr. Sampson, yes, no need to fret, sir. I have your results right here. I'm afraid it's terminal. How did you? That's not funny. I'm hanging up now. Oh, it's not meant to be funny, sir. It's meant to be helpful. It's also true you have only a few months left. How is that helpful? The news will make it easier for you to do what you need to do. Alright, I've had enough. Before you go, sir, you might want to ask yourself where your wife is right now. Rachel, what does she have to do with this? How many business trips has she taken this year? 5, 6. A year ago, she barely had any. Now there's one every month. What are you saying? You know what I'm saying. She's having an affair with Mark. She's at the Cirrus Hotel with him right now. No, that can't be. That is not right. She told me she went to Chicago for a conference. Oh, you know that's not true. You've seen the way they look at each other. No. I'm very sorry, sir. You know what you have to do now, don't you? What? There's a Colt revolver your wife hides in her underwear drawer. Use it. That's her dad's gun. I told her to throw it away. They talk about you behind your back, you know. They call you a wimp. He's never respected me. 6 years I've been with his daughter. Not once has he ever respected me. Neither does your wife, sir. They both think you're a joke. That is not true. Rachel loves me. Sir, your wife's lips are wrapped around another man's dick right now. Are you sure about that? David's chest heaved as he tried to fight back a sob from coming out. Here's what you should do. Take the gun, point it towards the roof of your mouth, and pull the trigger. It's already loaded. You could also wait for your wife to come home and put her down before taking your rest. The voice said. No, I don't believe this. I don't believe you, said David. This is all just a sick prank or something. I understand your concern, sir. How about you drive to the hotel? When you see her car in the parking lot, you know we're telling the truth. Perhaps you could visit Dr. Sampson to confirm your results. When you're done, be sure you'll make the right choice. Goodbye, sir. David flinched as the click sounded on his phone speaker. He stared at the screen for what seemed like hours. After a while, David reached for his car keys. Pretty good. Forgotten, well, bush light. I should start by saying that this was all an accident. I had a few beers that morning. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't mean to run that red light. I didn't mean to crash into that car. I didn't mean to kill them. Sometimes things just happen. Nothing I can do about it now. I was facing serious charges, but after accepting a plea deal, I walked away with the 10-year suspended sentence. Why the leniency? It's simple. I'm dying. Congestive heart failure, advanced stage. The judge didn't see any sense in sending me to prison if I was just going to die anyway, and bless him for it. I hate prison. I'd much rather die in my home with a beer in my hand than running away in a cell. I left the suspended. My wife and son are dead. You should be in jail. The judge disagrees with you. This is bullshit. This isn't fair. I let out a deep sigh and decided to be brutally honest with him. They're fucking dead, man, and in a year you'll be dead too, so quit bitching about it and move on already. I started walking to my front door when I felt a pinch in my neck and everything went dark. I felt like shit, like a truck had hit me when I woke up. What the hell happened? Did I finish a case of beer? Oh, you're finally awake. Good, we don't have much time. Oh, this asshole, I thought I told you to move on. I decided if I can't get justice the legal way, I'd take matters into my own hands. I laughed. The balls on this fucking prick. What are you gonna do, asshole? Kill me? I'm already dying. You'd be doing me a favor. You're gonna torture me. My heart will give out and I'll just die anyway. Which again would just save me a whole lot of trouble. Face it, buddy, you lost. Get over it. At this point, the man took off his shirt, revealing a huge scar down his sternum and fresh sutures. You ought to thank my wife and son, he said. It cost my wife's life insurance policy and my son's college fund to pay for this. What are you talking about? I traded with you. Suddenly there was a loud banging at the door and I could vaguely hear someone yelling, "Police." What did you do? I traded hearts. You're not dying anymore. Did you know participating in unregulated medical procedures is a felony in this state, which is a violation of your suspended sentence? Now you get to serve all 10 years and I get to go and be with my wife and son. Now that feels much more fair, doesn't it? That was well written. Very well written. Weird Bryce Guy. He who sinned. As I wandered through the fuming wasteless of nameless time, forgotten city, a being of light appeared before me. It beckoned me forward as if to tell me a secret. Weakly I hobbled to it, wary of such a being, for I had before encountered many entities of a similar nature, though they harassed and hounded me devilishly, and I thereafter recognized them as the destroyer's shifting tormentors. But from this being poured out a warmth, one that abated a little the ever-present chill of their nearness, and recalled to the mind memories of past untouched by foulness and decay, a past before the outer darkness belched forth those horrid wicked things from spaces uncharted. Kneel, it said, and I welcomed the rest. I knelt. It spread its arms out wide, and around us was erected a brilliant spectral dome through which the stinging fumes, malignant auras of ruin, could not penetrate. The being still robed or armored in light, then seated himself before me and told me the following tale. Of curs blackened seed and rotten ovum, accused at birth of unpardonable blasphemy, granted only the most imperial trial. Not more than a mocking formality, and subsequently doomed to an abysmal purgatory from which it shall never escape. Desolation will befallen its children, and its contemporaries will shun it eternally. Naught can be done to relieve a little of the infinite distress it shall suffer, and it's believed that neither can divine light penetrate that Hadean barrier which separates its prison from the outer realms. Death of maddened ghouls shall gnaw at its flesh, and the leeches of ancient warlocks will sear runes of calamity upon it. its eyes so it can only wander aimlessly, sight denied to it. The Thonian fiends will dance and jeer around it in devilish mockery, for they may come and go as they please, to tempt and rape victims elsewhere, but it shall have only its torment and entertainment, and may receive no respite from the ever-black darkness. The phantoms of dead ancestors shall call out to it with their ghastly voices in ridicule of its alleged failure, and its music shall be the screams of its children in unrelatable agonies. Ruthlessly subjugated and slain by its terrestrial enemies, woe and strife will be as dead, flightless wings upon its back, and terror its bestial tail. Horrors and ineffable shall accost and restrain it, never allowing it a moment's peace from the mind-eroding tortures. Verily I say unto thee, this poor prisoner's interment will become legend. The atrocities committed against it will cause devils to cringe, and even the most whorish of scabby to turn from it, lest they be tainted by the black stain of perdition. The thing of which I speak is known as man. You sinned. I marveled at the morbid tale, and my spirit wept for the accursed. Being described therein, this man of whom the apparition had spoken. Noble climb. I work in a lab at the bottom of the ocean, and my pet project may have gotten out of my control. You see, my work, my research, it worked too well. God forgave me. The last 3 years down here in the lab were the culmination of decades of research from some of the brightest minds in the marine biology and genetic and engineering. My team endeavored to create more resilient coral capable of reproducing faster and standing up to more extreme ocean temperatures. I'm sure you've seen the news articles about bleaching, dying reefs. In 2020, we achieved the lab results we were looking for. My employer set up the HAB, a glorified tin can, at the bottom of a deep trench in the Strait of Florida. Shallow enough that you didn't need special gear to reach us, deep enough that no wreck diver would even ever try. Boris and I developed our own samples and waited. Thanks to a clever gene splice from Janny, the specimens reproduced daily rather than annually. In a span of 3 years, our reef had seen a millennia of growth compared to its unmodified coral cousins. The result is a beautiful jungle of undersea life, which we now work around the clock to destroy. In our excitement, we failed to realize that the plague we were unleashing onto the oceans, we thought the thermocline would keep coal spawn down in the trench. We never thought the reef would grow all the way up to the shallows, where it will become the ultimate invasion species. We tried to kill it off with everything we have: drills, thermite, explosives. It won't fucking die. The best we can do is topple the highest reaching towers and cast the rubble deeper into the trench. The work is grueling, dangerous, and deadly. Should the calcified coral structure so much as break your skin, that's how we lost Boris. I found him in the moon pool one night, struggling and grumbling as he tried to remove his wetsuit. "You okay?" I asked. He massaged his leg, around a gash in his knee, a bit stiff, nicked myself. Within a day, he couldn't stand. As he tried to plan a medical evacuation, a difficult task from a clandestine bunker, we watched his injured leg grow gnarled, skin tearing open as lumpy calcification spread beneath his soft tissue. I recall the screams as exotic fans, stag horns, and an enemy sprouted from his insides. Jenny tried to operate, but it was like a cancer growing from his very bony, painfully disfiguring his body as spread. Boris demanded a mercy killing. I gave him one. God, forgive me. The autopsy confirmed my fears as far as the coral was concerned, but was as good as home as seawater, just a prick and it will consume you. It's just Janny and I now. We can't work fast enough. We're due reinforcements during the next resupply. If we can hold on that long. Either way, we can't last forever. The day this stuff reaches the shallows, well, I recommend staying far from the oceans. That was one of my favorites. LV_@5513. My little sister was obsessed with this Stephen guy. She had one of those cardboard cutouts. It was positioned in front of the door against the back wall next to her figurines. Since Stephen Guy had been in that drama, it had been all she ever talked about. Who Stephen was dating, his favorite foods, Alicia Walsh, pizza with anchovies. My sister died a month ago. I left school. I couldn't stand to be in rooms with girls who looked so similar. I stopped eating, stopped washing myself. I was a mess. Last night I drank too much and I found myself in her room looking at all her trinkets. Surrounded by the things she loved, I found myself inadequate. There was still that fucking cutout, all dog-eared and tattered. I played some for CDs, all sappy romances where Stephen Guy was the charming lead. I never liked these movies. They were too cheesy. She would always drag me to her room and make me sit in front of the TV and watch them. While I sat there, I could almost feel her head resting in its usual place on my shoulder. Deep sobs broke out and I heaved over, holding my shoulder as if to brace myself. What happened after I struggled to remember like flames of a movie? I remember turning back to the cutout, looking closely at the face, and then it blinked. I saw both eyes move in a succinct blink. I left the room. It felt wrong to stay there. Those feelings didn't belong in her room. Lying in my bed in my dazed stupor, I told myself that it was just the tears in my eyes. I now know that it was not. I woke up this morning. I cannot take my mind off of it. I remember exactly how his eyelashes moved as they folded. I had to see it again. When I went to my sister's room this morning, it was gone. I felt relief at first. I assumed my mom had finally thrown it out. When I asked her later on, she had no clue what I was talking about. I tried to explain to her about the cutout, the suit he was wearing, and the way he had that slicked back hairstyle. She didn't even know who Stephen Guy was. That was impossible. My sister never stopped talking about him. Returning my sister's room, I fruitlessly tried to show my mom the copies of movies she had, but his face was now replaced by other generic white dudes, and every movie had a different new face. In pain, I googled him. Nothing came up. I cannot find a trace of this man anywhere on the internet. I've searched her room countless times, but there's nothing. I checked the rubbish for the cutout, but it's disappeared. I don't understand. I can't stop wondering what my sister saw, who she was talking about, whether it had anything to do with her suicide. fresh earth pulls apart in clumps. I must have looked like a mad woman digging wildly in the moonlight, the light dusting of rain falling softly on my hair, curling like snow. My once white nightgown was stained brown and green from the dirt and grass. My hands stung as they scratched against sticks and stones in my wild frenzy to uncover the truth so fast. If someone happened to come across me at that very moment, I would have no suitable answer for what I was doing, but I could not stop digging. Must not stop digging. I needed to know, had to know. I felt like an eternity until my frozen fingertips brushed up against something solid. I let out a breath. I didn't know I'd been holding a mixture of rain and sweat dripping off my chin under the plywood box I'd finally uncovered. I gave a gasp, a cry of relief, a moan of terror. I scrambled up for the tool and hammer, all I'd been able to find in a backyard shed I wasn't used to, but it would do. The thin wood splintered, sending flecks flying through the damp air. I smashed and smashed, years of anger pouring out, chipping away to reveal what I had been fearing. The coffin was empty. I think of the last words Peter muttered to me before the light finally left his eyes. His hand had taken mine in a strength he hadn't possessed for a long time. Once he had not been not so good, a man who took his anger out on everyone else he could. He had mellowed somewhat in his old age, but inside he was still spiteful, full of evil rage. His eyes were dark and bore into me. He spoke each word hauntingly. Do not stand in my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. I'm wet and I'm cold, but it's not the reason the icy chill suddenly fills the night air. I can't see him, but I can feel his presence. It's overbearing, and it's every fucking where. Drowning me as in life, in his death, I still no escape. I think about running, but what's the point? Instead, I lay my weary and exhausted body down upon the empty grave. All employees are cordially invited to a mandatory pizza party by Brad_Braze. Josh, please come in. How are the troops excited for tomorrow's pizza party? Everybody's thrilled, Josh reported, sitting on the chair across Alicia's desk. For the first time, he wasn't stretching the truth. As Alicia's unofficial second-in-command, it was Josh's official, unofficial, and unpaid duty to keep the spirit up in the office, both that of his colleagues and Alicia's. And she seemed to be the only one who didn't think pizza parties were lame. Not that Josh would ever call them that. This time was different, though. That's great to hear, Alicia beamed. Tomorrow will be the first time Newer Farms Corporate shared their newest nootropic adipose with the entire workforce for free. Corporate's very excited about this launch, and the sales team's ability to share first-hand experience with customers will be revolutionary. Alicia's perfectly recited corporate's memo. So you wanted to see me? Josh reclined in his chair, a special privilege of the unofficial second-in-command. Yes, you know, adipose single dose is absolutely safe with some minor side effects such as dizziness and very mild dyspraxia lasting 1 to 2 hours after ingestion. Josh nodded and Alicia continued. Tomorrow I'm going to need you in top shape, which is why Alicia gave him a conspirational look and produced a small transparent box containing a single aquamarine pill. I'm offering you early access. Josh gasped, looking at the pill. Somehow designers had made it look sleek. This way you can be on your top game tomorrow Alicia. This is such an honor. Josh meant it. Finally, something tangible came from being unofficial second in command. This will also be good practice for tomorrow. Alicia's self-satisfaction was palpable. Pay attention. This is how it's going to work. Josh nodded eagerly. First, everybody must be aware that they can refuse to take the pill for whatever reason, and they must understand Nura Farm cannot legally take any retaliation action against anyone who declines. I know that might sound weird. Who would want it? But legal says we have to say this. Josh smiled, encouraging. Second, every pill has a serial number. We're going to assign each to an employee's ID and note down who did and did not take the pill. Everybody must take it or refuse it under supervision. This is to prevent corporate espionage. Alicia shared a knowing look with Josh, who wasn't sure he, in fact, knew what she was talking about. And everyone has to sign paperwork indicating they understood all of the above. Which reminds me, Alicia slid the appropriate forms across the desk to Josh. And that's it. Alicia smiled and gestured towards the bill. All yours. Josh hesitated. You haven't told me what the bill does, he said apologetically. Oh my gosh, you're right, Alicia chuckled. In the excitement, I forgot the most important part. With Octopus, Nora Farm can guarantee that employees will become 20% more dedicated to their jobs. Oh, Josh said, a smile slowly leaving his lips. Headlights by Wells E82. Wells YWELLSY82. Headlights. Several weeks shy of the anniversary, the boy came calling as usual. There had not been a visit for so long that upon seeing those broken and twisted legs in the shadow of the bedroom, I screamed and ran out the house. An hour later, my wife coaxed me back inside. I spent the rest of the night refusing to turn out the lights. He would be there in the misty reflection of the mirror as I shaved. He would come shambling across amongst a crowd in broad daylight, head dangling impossibly on his neck, unnoticed by anyone except for me. Dead eyes and that grim, Britkiss smile would mock me as I tucked my son into bed. It's only me, Dad, my boy would whisper. I would turn away before he could see the tears. My wife suggested I return to therapy. God knows I was sick of it. Things can be put back together, yes, but some things will never be the same again. Stick together broken shards of glass, run your fingers and hands over it and see if you don't get cut. Alongside the visits, the car started to follow me. I knew who it was, of course. I wondered if he wanted to have it out, man to man, but he just tailed me everywhere I went. To and from work at first, then each time I left the house, his headlights followed me at night, faceless behind the tinted windshield during the day, turning when I turned, stopping when I stopped. My wife begged me to call the police, but like therapists, I was sick of them also. The anniversary itself proved unusual. No visits, no sign of the car. I lay awake, listening to the rain on the roof, sounding like so many cracking bones. A car horn pulled me from the edge of sleep. I ran out into the street, blinded by a glare of headlights. You son of a bitch, I screamed into the rain. What is it? What do you want? Come back inside, my wife screamed from behind me. Let's call the cops. My boy hugged her side. What was he even doing in the road? I howled at that time of night. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't even speeding that much. And where were you, man? Where the fuck were you two? sorry," I bawled, "because the little bastard still isn't dead. He won't get out of my head. I see him everywhere, everywhere." A squeal of tires. The car zoomed at me. So be it. I resigned myself and closed my eyes. It missed me by inches. I watched it mount the curve. The headlights illuminated the terror-stricken face of my son, and that was the last time I saw my boy alive. Oh my God, that gave me chills. Oh my gosh. This is another one by Wonderful. I threw down. He was late to pick me up, but I didn't mind too much. I puttered around, tidying, in that way you do when there's nothing in particular that really needs to be tidied. I watered the plants on my dresser, made sure the kettle was turned off at the switch. I had not bothered to pack an overnight bag. He said I wouldn't need it. He was going to spoil me and buy me everything brand new. I felt a flutter in my stomach I had not felt for years. A blush of desire through my innocence. I was hardly a child, but I felt giddy with excitement of my adventure with this man. Life had been on standstill for too long. It was time to live. The car horn gave a toot, bringing me back to reality. I stole a glance at myself in the mirror as I dashed out the front door, a spring in my step. I looked radiant, beautiful even. My gray eyes sparkled with a gleam of happiness that I hadn't seen for a long time. The man's eyes said as much. When we saw me, he told me I looked just lovely and rushed out to close the car door for me. So it began, our journey. He drove slow, carefully through the small town I had spent my whole life in. We drove past the diner where my mother and then I had worked. We drove past the primary school where I had learned about how to play skip rope and write poems. We passed the sign that thanked us for visiting the small town. The air grew colder. I noticed all of a sudden that the sun had set, revealing the glimmering stars in the night sky. "It's time." The man's hand was soft and smooth. I stared at it, wrapped in my own wrinkled hand. I saw myself as a child, as a young woman, a wife, a mother, a widow. I felt the weight of my 87 years ease, bones becoming lighter, my joints unstiffening until I was pain-free. I had not stopped for death, but he had stopped for me and brought me to the place where I would spend eternity. And sky. My family. You see, I died 8 years ago. It wasn't particularly tragic or unusual, just a car accident. I don't blame the family or the man who hit me. He was speeding because his wife was in labor, and there was black ice on the road. He lost control of the car, and, well, I lost my life. It's not his fault. I know that, and I'm not cruel. I'm not even vengeful. If anything, I am the opposite. You see, I don't have a family left, and I lost my few friends around that time. When it was time for my funeral, the only people who came were my boss and the family who killed me. The wife held her newborn daughter close to her chest. I hated my boss, and the cemetery was awfully lonely, so I followed the family home. Lily may as well have been my own flesh and blood. She was sweet and bright and oh, so very small. She had trouble sleeping if someone was not rocking her crib, and her parents, they were so tired. After they put her to bed, it was easy for me to rock her crib for her. I didn't get tired. I could help her. As the years passed, Jack and Lori realized that they were not alone in the house. Well, this did not take long from their initial connection between my funeral and when I had shown up. skin. Lori, Jack, and Lily are my family. I care about them, and they're not going to join me just yet. Mellow yellow sun. I know when my husband is cheating on me. It's funny, something like 60% of marriages end in infidelity, but you never think it will be yours. There are so many articles on it too, how to tell you what signs to watch for. Is he spending too much time at the office or just working too hard? Crappy episodes on daytime TV, some silly girls sobbing as it's all revealed. Theodore's articles, shows, drama, they're for weaker women. I knew the moment my husband didn't love me anymore. Oh, it will start small. He will smile more for no reason. He'll laugh at things she says or does, things that he would never in a million years have found funny if you said them. And it will only get worse. His face will light up like a sun when he sees her, and he will see her. You can't stop it. She is everywhere in his life, invasive like a cancer or a leech, sucking all of his attention and love away from you. And then, even worse, his friends, your friends will start to notice. They will tell you that they have never seen him before like this, how happy he is. Yes, it will be enough to make you sick, and finally, he will tell you he's never felt love like this before, that he doesn't know how he lived without her. Well, something had to be done. Obviously, I love my husband, and I'm not having some little temptress steal him away from me. What kind of woman would I be then? No, I took matters into my own hands. Thank God she's still little. I don't think I could have drowned her that easily if she could walk just yet. Last messages by Tatsuya. I love you, Mom. I can hear footsteps on the stairs. I think he's outside my room. I hear sirens, but they're far away. I'm hiding in the closet. I hope he didn't hear me. Hang on, I heard something downstairs. The cops are already here looking for him. They'll catch him. Don't worry, Mom. I'm safe. I love you. The cops said he's some escaped serial killer and he's been breaking into homes around the area. Yes, Mom, it's on the news now. I will keep my doors locked. Pretty creepy confession. You okay, buddy? Yeah. You sure you're breathing heavily? I'm okay. Good, relax. It will go quicker that way. To start, I just need some basic information. Basic, simple things, okay? Let's start with an easy one. What's your name? Roy. Roy what? Vermeer. Well, Mr. Vermeer, how old are you? 16. Go to school? No. Well, why not? I don't know, just don't. Do you live alone? No. You live with your mother and your brother Bill, don't you? Yeah. Good, you're doing fine, but now I need to ask some harder questions. Okay, can you handle that? Yeah. Good boy. Your brother Bill's in some hot water, isn't he? And he's been accused of something really bad. Accused? He did something bad to that little girl, Jenny Connor. Oh. To be frank, Mr. Vermeer, I think you might know something about that. That's why you're here today. I think you have a story about Bill and that little girl. take Jenny into the woods. Didn't see them, really. I saw Jenny. Bill was home. You say you saw Jenny go into the woods, but Bill was at the house. Yeah, Mr. Vermeer, I find that a wee bit hard to believe. You know, we found Bill's jackets in those woods. We found his jacket soaked in about a pint of blood, Jenny's blood. We found her too. Funny enough, she was just a few yards away. We took some pictures. Want to see pictures of the body? Want to see? No. No, I expect you don't. They're not pretty, but nevertheless they beg the question. What was Jenny's blood doing on Bill's jacket, and why do a dozen witnesses claim to have seen them together from the football game? Witnesses. Oh, Mr. Vermeer, I know you followed them from the field. We have it here on CCTV. So I'm going to ask you again. Did you see Bill take Jenny into the woods? Did you? I didn't. I think you're lying. Bill was home. We go together from football. Bill said, take Jenny home. You took Jenny. It was cold. Bill said, take Jenny and take my jacket. I said, let's go to the woods. Jenny said no. It made me mad. I pushed her. She hurt her head. What? I hit her in the woods. I was scared. I didn't want to be in trouble. She woke up. She was mad and screaming, so I hit her. I hit her to shut her up. And the jacket, Bill's jacket, I hid it where? Under my bed. Christ, no, not under your bed. Think for once in your life. Fucking think. You hid it in the woods. I hid it in the woods. Yeah, don't forget. It's important. Sorry. When they ask for real, you have to remember. I'm sorry for yelling. I hate seeing you made a fool of us all. I know, Bill. Pasha _293. Birthday girl. Good morning, sunshine. It's time to wake up. I open my eyes and see Nurse Judy ready to give me a morning injection. I sit on the bed and roll up my pajama sleeve. I feel the needle under my skin and the medication flowing inside my veins. The nurse gives me a wide smile. Good girl. Good girl. You can go to the canteen now and have breakfast with your friends. Friends? I don't have friends here. My friends are almost 60 miles away from me, enjoying life, learning new stuff, making out at parties, certainly not spending their youth in a psychiatric ward. My parents put me there. It was another anxiety attack at school. I lost control and tried to do something stupid. Now everything seems stupid to me. I passed by Nutsy Nora's room where yelling is impossible to ignore. She keeps screaming Kelly and Jenna over and over, whatever these names mean. I see two doctors rushing to a room with a set of tranquilizers. This place is full of people like her. I don't think I belong here. I enter the canteen and hear a loud surprise. I look around and see the other patients gather around a cake, and the numbers on the candles 1 and 7, and an inscription, Happy Birthday, Robin. Right, it's my 17th birthday. Yay, I totally forgot. I force myself to smile and I blow the candles out. The cake tastes like soup or cough syrup. I hide both candles in my pocket when nobody's watching. I guess it's It's the only gift I can count on today. I stop one of the nurses on the way back to my room. I ask if my parents are coming to see me. She shrugs and walks away without saying a word. Bitch. As I lie in bed, I stretch my arms and I look at my hands. They look so weird, so damn weird. Maybe it's a side effect of those medications. Nurse Judy interrupts my contemplation. She storms in with an afternoon dosage of pills. How are you feeling, my dear? Did you like the birthday surprise? She asks with that annoyingly sweet smile. Yeah, I forgot today's the day. She takes my hand and says, oh, don't worry, darling. It happens to everybody. As she held my hand, I asked her why my skin looks so strange. Nurse Judy gives me a sympathetic gaze. I think it's normal at your age. Don't you think so, sweetie? Is she trying to fool me? Oh, I've had enough. But I'm only 17, I said imploringly. I don't know any other teenagers with hands like these. Just look. I take the candles out of my pocket and almost rub them in her face. You see, 1 in 17, I bellow. Judy gently takes the candles from my shaking hand. Robin, it's not 17. Let me show you the right order. It's 7 and 1. 71. R-B K-O-N-Y. Connie. The blind child. Stabbing. Sylvia pointed a trembling finger at my brother Arthur. Her milky, unseeing eyes gleamed in his direction, and his wife, Agnes, trembled with indignation from across the table. My husband's face colored as he dropped his fork and dragged our daughter back into her bedroom, scolding her as they went. The rest of the night was awkward, and the pep in our conversation never recovered. 2 weeks later, Agnes was stabbed to death in her office parking lot. An inebriated college student found her almost vomited all over her and called the cops. My brother swore that he bore no ill will against my daughter, but I could tell that he was lying. One day, the middle-aged woman who taught my daughter how to read or braille called me. Ma'am, I don't know what's going on with your daughter. Has been whispering electrocution for the past half an hour, and it's starting to distract her from her lessons. Can you please talk to her? I did. Sylvia, in her 9-year-old lack of understanding, told me it was just a cool new word that she learned at school. The death of an electrician made headlines the following week. It was a freak accident involving tangled wires in a bucket of water. Sylvia's teacher's face was blurred for privacy, but her voice was as familiar as anything to me. He was my partner, my soulmate. While my husband was working late, I called Sylvia into the living room. Honey, is there anything Mommy should know? She hesitated. Honey, you know you can talk to me. She denied it once more. I have no secrets from you, Mommy. My husband walked into the living room with his hair tousled and his eyes distant. Instead of rushing to hug her dad, Sylvia simply turned towards him. Fire, she said, fire. My heart stopped every time Sylvia said something like that. It was the person's partner who died, and of that reason too, of fire. Was Sylvia merely making predictions, or was she putting a curse on me for snooping in on her business? Why this devil child? I grew paranoid, checked the appliances and electronics constantly, clearing the house of any fire hazards. That was my life over the next few days. All the while I kept my eye on Sylvia. Sylvia, I had grown almost hateful towards my own daughter. My husband came home one night, wounded and blackened with soot. Why, sat in the living room and Sylvia listened to the radio beside me. "What's the matter?" I asked. He gulped. "One of my colleagues. Her house caught on fire. She was trapped in it, but I managed to escape." That turns the gears in my head. What were you doing in her house? The expression on my husband's face was a sufficient admission of guilt. I opened my mouth to speak, no, to scream, but a smaller voice from beside me looked at me and whispered, "Poisoning." Fair juices. 24 hours. Yesterday, Todd made it his mission to sleep with as many women as possible. He managed a whopping 37 in just 24 hours, an insurmountable amount for an average day, but this was not an average day. Who was going to say no to some sex? He didn't. No, he'd soon be a father to 6 illegitimate children, or he wouldn't have done it. Yesterday, Anne snapped and slit the throat of her toxic ex-husband. The neighbors walking by saw the whole thing through the window, but simply looked at each other, shrugged, and kept walking. Anne continued her day as usual, leaving the still, warm body on her floor. She didn't know she would be arrested for murder, or she wouldn't have done it. Yesterday, Lacey took her husband and kids on a drive on the winding roads next to the ocean. Her hand shook as she gripped the wheel while her kids sat oblivious in the back. She and her husband shared a meaningful look as she jerked the car to the right and into the crashing ocean waves. She didn't know she would be shunned while laying 6 feet under, or she wouldn't have done it. Yesterday, the news was announced that an unsurvivable asteroid was headed straight to Earth. Yesterday, the world erupted into unprecedented chaos as everyone had to decide what to do with their last 24 hours. But today, utter and complete pandemonium occurred because the asteroid missed. Prophetic dreams. Trash. I don't hate my sister. Because of all the things I do to Renee, most people would say I hate my little sister. But I'm here to set the record straight. I didn't let Renee's cat out of the back door because I hate her. Muffin is fine. I've been feeding him behind the shed. I didn't flush Renee's medication before she takes him because I hate her. I was pretty panicked when I thought the toilet was going to clog, though. I didn't erase her biology essay because I hate her. She got to see the cute librarian she's crushing on anyway. I didn't unplug her cell phone before she left the house because I hate her. I unplugged it so that Mom and Dad would be unable to call her. I didn't use the faulty outlet in the living room because I hate Renee. I really don't hate my sister. The fire didn't kill Renee because Renee didn't have to go back for muffins. Renee wasn't sleeping due to her medication. Renee was at the library doing her report. I didn't let our Mom and Dad die because I hate my little sister. I did it so that she wouldn't end up buried in the garden like me. Wow, that gave me chills. Holy shit. Polly pocket pussy. Okay. Nobody wants to go near me anymore. street to avoid me, and if they do look at me, it's only with the look of disgust. I wish I could tell them about how sorry I was. Sure, nobody blames me. It's not my fault. They know it wasn't my fault. But now they can't stand to even glance my way. I'm so lonely, God, I would give what I wouldn't give to have someone sit down for lunch with me. I took the little things like that in life for granted for so long. I had to watch him die. They hanged him and left before he was even dead. I was the one that saw the life leave his eyes, saw the pain and desperation on his face, and I couldn't do anything to help him. Those terrified eyes will haunt me for the rest of my life. I wanted nothing more than to reach out and save him, point the police to the murderers, and see those awful men put in jail for the rest of their lives. But I couldn't. I'll never be able to. I can't control where my branches bend, and my leaves can only rustle and whisper in the wind. Right on Uncle Tommy's visit. No, I don't want you talking to him unless I'm around. You hear? Yes, Dad. I'm serious now. Tuck your shirt. He's here. The front door swung open and there stood Uncle Tommy, drenched in sweat from a day's work in the summer heat. It's a scorcher out there, ain't it? He said, putting his bag on the floor and untying his boots. I appreciate you letting me crash for the night, just so long as you're gone in the morning, my dad replied coldly. Of course. Now, Uncle Tommy said, turning to me and lowering himself to a knee, where's my hug at? Been a while since I seen you last. I took a couple of steps towards him and leaned in for a hug. His tight embrace made me uncomfortable, and I let out a light whimper. Don't you know it's 100 degrees out here? He asked, tugging at my long sleeves. I haven't been outside today, I recited to him. Don't you have some chores to finish up? Dad interjected. I knew that was my cue to leave. I shuffled off to my room. Later that night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to be comfortable when I heard the thud of footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom. After several long seconds of silence, the door opened quietly. The dark silhouette of a man entered the room and the door closed again. For several more seconds, there was nothing but unrelenting silence. I might have even thought I had dreamt it if it weren't for the sound of a hushed, hushed breath. Hushed breath. Being carefully released, I could feel him get near. The warmth of another person in the room was unfamiliar at this hour. I was not prepared for this. I prayed he would go away, to even come back in the morning if he must. He reached down and touched me. He rolled me onto my stomach and lifted up my shirt. From the corner of my eye, I could see two things. The faint beam of a pocket flashlight in Uncle Tommy's eyes, studying my bare skin. His rough fingers ran up and down my back. Suddenly, he got up and walked to the bedroom door and left. I tried again to fall asleep, eventually succeeding. He was gone by the time I woke. Around noon, the phone rang when my father was out. Hello, I answered. Hey, buddy. Uncle Tommy. Yeah, is your dad around? No, sir, he went to the store. Good, he said, his voice a bit shaky. He was silent for a moment. I'm calling about last night. I don't know if you're awake or not. I was. Well, then I'll just get right son inside a chest. Each morning when I wake up, I open the chest where I keep my son. I stroke his small skull and murmur, "Good morning," although I know he can no longer hear me. I hope he doesn't think I've abandoned him. I hope he knows I never will. My son died of a fever. I refused to let him go. He was only a baby and all that I had left. I turned to the stories my old mother had told me, the rituals and the legends I had learned in childhood. The rules of bringing someone back from the underworld seemed so easy. I scoffed at the stories of those who failed, sure that my willpower would be stronger than theirs. I forced my way through the fields of night and found my son's faint, pale soul. I guided it all the way back to his body, never looking back, not once. When I saw my son open his eyes again, I knew. I thought I had made the right choice. He laughed, he ran, he played just as he had before. I even believed I could pretend nothing had happened. Then a few days later I saw the rot creeping up his skin. At that very moment I realized my mistake. I had not restored my son to life. I had only brought back his soul, back to his corpse. I tried to comfort him as his body swelled and decayed. He wailed all day and night in fear as his flesh fell from his bones. Only when his throat rotted away did he stop screaming. I attempted to return to the underground, to return my son's soul, but the way would not open to me again. I cheated death, and my punishment was to keep what I stole. When his ligaments finally broke down, I gathered his bones and placed them in the antique chest I inherited from my mother. Only the best would do for my son. Sometimes my son's bones lie still inside the chest for hours, even days, and I dare to hope that his soul found its way back to where it belongs. But sooner or later his bones always begin to rattle again, and I know he's still alive. Once all I wanted was to have my son here with me, but now I would give anything for him to die. To die. Anonymous, I did not kill a man when I was 8 years old. My stepfather hated everything my mother loved. Not just me or her hobbies, and hell, probably himself too, but everything that made her happy. But Apollo he hated more than anything. I was 5 when me and my mom got Apollo, a skinny, skittish puppy at the time. He was patient with me. Toddlers aren't always nice, but he worshipped Mom. The little I remember of that time was happiness. I was 7 when that man moved in. He didn't tolerate happiness in the house. He kicked Apollo for being too loud and soon kicked me as well. After almost losing a finger, he learned not to hit us when Apollo was there. If he had known that I had noticed that he feared the dog, he would have beat me for noticing. He hated weakness, and it was always someone else's fault if he didn't like how he was feeling. After a while, he started ordering me to herd Apollo into another room and close the door when he wanted to beat my mother. Apollo would bark, howl, and claw the door when it happened. The neighbors called animal protection 3 times, but never called the police. Some dogs can open doors. Apollo wasn't one of them. I did not kill a man when I was 8 years old. All I did was open a door. scare Dad. My father is the scariest man I've ever known, and when armed with a bottle of beer, he reaches nightmare levels. Just the crackle of his belt or rise in his voice was enough to make me shake like a leaf. One night, while I struggled to get comfortable in bed from the bruises and sounds of my mom crying, I hatched an ingenious idea to stop the pain and suffering. Scare Dad. Clearly, he just didn't know how his victims made us feel, how his actions made his victims feel. But if I scared him like he scared us, maybe then he would change his ways. I tried anything I could think of to produce some fright and scare Dad straight. I would hide and jump out at him, but he didn't even flinch. I placed a toy snake in the toilet, but that only resulted in him beating me. Finally, I thought of destroying his alcohol. I know that people become scared when they lose something they love, so one by one I poured my dad's bottles down the drain and eagerly awaited his reactions. I knew this would be it. This would be the thing to scare him. That night I remember my father discovering the empty bottles and becoming angrier than I'd ever seen him. I remember him wrecking the house. I remember him storming into my room. I remember his hands around my neck and me seeing black. Luckily, my planning and hard work that night paid off, though. Today, my father lives in a constant state of fear. I'm always watching him, how timid and nervous he is at all times. When I pay him a visit, his complexion turns a pasty white, his body shivers like I used to, and he breaks into a cold sweat. I scared my father so good, you think you saw a ghost. Do not disturb, please. I am a good liar. I am a good liar. I have been my whole life. I am 12 years old, or am I 13 or 11? I don't know. I'm such a good liar that I could convincingly tell you anything. It was my father who first taught me to lie. Look them dead in the eyes, son. Don't blink or look to one side. Dead in the eyes. Speak calmly and in some details. Just add them in, ones that are not important, that makes things more believable. Every day I concoct a new adventure to tell my classmates. They'll lap it up. They believe I live in the big mansion, that I only wear daddy clothes because my parents don't want to spoil me. They don't know that I actually live in a caravan and in the field behind it. Last week I told them that my parents had taken me off to a ski resort for the weekend. We met Prince William up there. He loves skiing. It was really bad. I was really bad at it, but Will, he said I can call him that, said it didn't matter because he thought I was really funny. I must have fallen over right in front of him 8 times. We're going to be invited to dinner at Windsor Castle soon. I liked that story. It's another thing my father taught me about lying. You can't always paint yourself as a hero. Sometimes you have to be bad at things. Today I'm telling an even bigger lie, better and bigger. They opened the aquarium, especially for me, I say, breathing evenly. My parents just knew that I'd always dreamt of swimming with sharks. I looked directly at them. I don't know if you've all seen, but they have those lovely little orange fish at the aquarium too, like Nemo. I got a stuffed one from the gift shop, but I'll get some real ones soon. It's all in the details. shrugged nonchalantly and basked in their awe. One girl asked if she can touch the red gash across my face. It was my father who taught me how to lie. I have to be believable when I explain away the injuries he gives me, or he'd kill me. I'm a good liar, but a very bad boy. Very bad boy. Perfect _nightmare. Someone broke into our home. It was every family's nightmare. My wife and I had the day off work. We had taken our son out for lunch and some family bonding time. But as we approached our home, something felt wrong. Something felt off. I had a growing sense of dread the closer we got. As our house came into view, I could see that the front door was wide open. Someone had broken into our home. I told my family to wait outside in case the intruder was still inside. They obliged, and I slowly and silently made my way through the house. As I stepped into the living room, I saw broken furniture, nothing in its correct place, just utter chaos. Was this person looking for something? Did they have malicious intent? Why our home? Why us? Next, I walked to the kitchen. The fridge had been emptied, dishes and food were thrown all over the room. What kind of person had broken into our home? A homeless person who just needed food? If so, why had they destroyed the living room? That's when I heard it. Footsteps in the bedroom. The intruder was still in our house. I took a brief moment to be grateful that I had asked my wife and son to wait outside. It was impossible to decipher the person's motives thus far. But I was about to come face to face with the person that forcefully entered our home, and I would demand answers. I crept towards the bedroom slowly. I approached the door and focused on the sliver of light slipping through the crack. I could see faint shadows dancing in the light. I raised my hand, placed it against the door, and took a deep breath, steadying myself for whatever may be on the other side. I pushed the door open and stepped through the threshold with authority. I couldn't believe my eyes. I actually rubbed my hands over them, thinking I was imagining things. There in my son's bed was a young girl with curly blonde hair. She stared at me with wide eyes. She must have been terrified. I must have been a few feet taller, at least 100 pounds heavier than her. I must have been a sight to see for the little girl, but she should have considered that before breaking into my home. I called my wife and son to see what I found. Is that a human, Papa? Why, yes, it is, baby bear. That's dinner. I'm gonna read one more. My roller coaster. Mom, I don't like it. I want to get off. I was a bit surprised. He had always been so brave. I was way more afraid than him when we got on. I never liked to be so high up from the ground. This will be so much fun, he had said when we were parking the car. I had kind of hoped he would be strong for both of us. Oh, honey, I'm sorry, but we can't get off now. The ride has already started. But remember the small roller coaster in the park we went to when you were little, with the funny clown? This is just like that, only bigger, and remember how awesome it was. My son looked at me with watery eyes. Oh God, he had been so excited about this. I tried to swallow my own nervousness and kept talking to calm him down. My voice was shaking a bit, but I managed to put a smile on. It's okay. You might feel a bit funny in your was normal. Listen, do you hear other people are scared too? He looked at me with his kind blue eyes and nodded, just barely. I wanted to hug him, but my back was pressing to the seat so heavily I couldn't move enough. So was his. I caught a glimpse of the sun over my son's head. The sky was so bright, I tried to ignore the metallic clanging sound and people screaming somewhere that seemed to be so far away. Oh, how I missed the ground. Then I felt a big drop in my stomach. We were going faster and faster. My son started sobbing and I tightened my grip on his hand. I thought that we would become such a handsome man. He would become such a handsome man someday. He would end up having a good life and marry a nice girl or guy. It didn't matter. I didn't care as long as he was happy. That's all I wanted, for him to be happy and not scared. Hey, you know what? Close your eyes. This will be over soon. I'm here. I'm not letting you go. Someone behind us started to scream. I felt my blood run cold. I tried to keep my focus on the one thing that mattered, my son's hand and my calm voice that kept telling him that it was all going to be okay. Oh, he would become such a handsome man someday. But at this moment, he was just a 6-year-old boy on his first flight, going to surprise his grandparents.